Hello, first-time home buyers. Thanks for joining me again today. And we want to talk about preparing yourselves for the costs, specifically the closing costs, and then also some costs that you may have after closing when you're buying your first home. A lot of first-time home buyers just think in terms of the down payment. Maybe they're shopping for down payment assistance to go along with their mortgage and don't realize what could be involved with the additional costs at closing. So I'm going to walk you through that a little bit today. Now, when it comes to closing costs, they're really broken out into three different categories from my perspective. You've got the lender closing costs, the lender generated costs. You have third-party closing costs, and you also have your escrows. So I'll explain the difference. Let's work first with the lender related lender closing costs. You would have, for example, an application fee. You might have a processing fee. You could have origination fees or discount points or underwriting fees. These are things that are lender generated closing costs that potentially can be negotiated with the lender. Now, the rest of the closing costs are not generated by the lender. So let's talk about third-party closing costs. You would have your appraisal, your inspection. You're going to have your title work, your title search, your title insurance. You may be using an attorney during the process to purchase a home, which is advisable. In a lot of areas, a lot of portions of the United States, it's not customary to use an attorney. Everyone just uses their realtor's sales contract, and I would consider using an attorney. But again, that costs money. You could have some other costs related to recording fees down at the town, for example, a wire transfer fee coming from when the money gets wired after closing, a credit report fee, a flood certification fee where the lender is going to require a flood cert to be done, which they don't do. It's a third-party service that checks to make sure that the home is not in a flood zone. These are all things that are not generated by the lender, but most of them are required. But you also have the ability to negotiate directly or find your own third-party provider, not with the appraisal, because that's a whole other video on that, but the inspector, if you're using an attorney, and also the title company. You could hire your own title company and negotiate the fees, even though they are all pretty close to one another when it comes to what you're going to pay for title work. So then the last part of your closing costs would be your escrows. Most lenders will require you to escrow your taxes, and that's really to make sure that the taxes are being paid, so that way if you fail to pay your taxes, the town is not coming in potentially foreclosing on the property, and they would take priority over the lender there. So when you talk about tax escrows, it's 1/4's worth of your taxes paid up front at closing, and that goes into an escrow account at the lender that they keep as a buffer. And then as you make your mortgage payments each month, a portion of that payment is for your property taxes. Okay, so let's just do some easy math and say your property taxes are $1,200 per year, so your $100 per month in your payment is going towards property taxes, but the lender takes 1/4 of that up front, $300. $300 up front as an escrow to keep in reserve. And they do that because your taxes could go up over time, and they want to make sure they have enough in the account to pay your taxes for you in the event that especially in the event that you stop making mortgage payments. They can still pay the taxes on the property. So the other part of the escrow would be homeowner's insurance. You'll likely need to pay for your homeowner's insurance 1 year in advance up front and show a paid receipt. So you need to take that into consideration when you're factoring in the closing costs as a first-time home buyer. And that'll need to be done before closing. Okay, you need to prove that the property will be insured as of the date of the purchase. Now, when it comes to these closing costs, you can negotiate with the lender to provide you with a lender credit to cover closing costs, not just their portion, but some of the other costs as well. But you have to know that if you do negotiate that with the lender, their end of the negotiation means that they're going to charge you a higher interest rate in return. You could also negotiate with the seller to cover some or all of these closing costs for you. FHA loans, for example, allow for the seller to cover up to 6% of the purchase price to cover your closing costs. Now, you've closed on the home, and let's say your closing was this morning. Now you're all excited and you're going to be driving over to the house and starting to move your things in. Hopefully you're cleaning a bit first. Now there's other costs you're going to have to think about. First, you may be moving a great distance, and if you don't have a vehicle to do that or a truck to do that yourself, you may be paying moving expenses. So factor that in. You may have some potential costs related to your utilities company. If you're getting your utilities going, whether it's electric, gas, internet, phone, whatever it is, you have to factor in any costs that may be involved with that, so do that research up front. Then you also have some maintenance, home maintenance. Do you have a lawn at this house that you're buying? Do you own a lawnmower? Do you have tools to be able to fix things? Do you have things to be able to paint? These are all sudden expenses that you may not have been thinking about before shopping for a home. Do you have what it takes to be a homeowner post-closing, and what will that cost for you to be able to do that? Furnishings, so it's not just the tools and the things that I mentioned, but do you need to buy window treatments? Do you need to buy furniture? Do you need to get pots and pans and dishes and load up your medicine cabinet with things that you take for granted, like aspirins and Tylenols and Q-tips and all of that stuff? So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. In addition to the closing costs, think about what it's going to take to be a homeowner the first few months that you buy your house. So anyhow, if you would like to get a quote and understand exactly what your closing costs will be as you're searching for your first home, just visit FHAlenders.com. I'll leave a link in the first pinned comment and in the description to take you over to the FHA closing cost page, and you can see all of the costs lined up there, so you get a really good estimate as to what it's going to cost you. You could bet on closing costs being anywhere from 2 to 4% of the purchase price, depending on the price of the home and also depending on the mortgage program that you're using. Thanks again for watching today. I hope you have a great day, and we'll help you purchase your first home.